Admiral Zefix's crystalline exoskeleton glimmered under the command deck's blue illumination as tactical displays painted the space around the human homeworld in precise detail. 10,000 hegemony vessels hung in perfect formation, their sleek hulls bristling with plasma cannons and quantum disruptors. The most powerful armada ever assembled, enough firepower to crack planets and boil away atmospheres. Against them, Earth's defenders numbered barely 300 ships. Target analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Vaxis, her insectoid mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Primitive chemical rockets, kinetic projectile weapons, basic energy shields. Their most advanced vessels appear to be fusion-powered. Zefix's four eyes swept across the holographic displays showing human ship configurations. Blocky, inefficient designs that looked more like flying scrapyards than proper warships. Fascinating. How did such a backward species achieve faster-than-light travel? Unknown, Admiral. Our xenobiologists theorized they stumbled upon the technology rather than developed it systematically. Pure chance, nothing more. The Admiral's thorax vibrated with what humans would recognize as dark amusement. In the 3 centuries since achieving interstellar flight, the galactic hegemony had absorbed over 400 civilizations. Some surrendered immediately upon witnessing hegemony superiority. Others fought briefly before accepting the inevitable. None had ever required more than a standard week to fully pacify. Standard First Contact Protocol, Commander. Transmit surrender terms on all frequencies. Give them precisely 10 minutes to respond appropriately. The transmission burst across space in 17 different languages, each one accompanied by detailed tactical analyses showing the futility of resistance. Standard hegemony doctrine demanded offering potential subjects one opportunity to submit peacefully before demonstrating the consequences of defiance. On Earth's orbital defense platform Luna 7, Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the alien transmission with grim determination. Around her, human officers worked frantically at their stations while klaxons wailed throughout the station. "Translations coming through now, Admiral," reported her communications officer, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the station's environmental systems working overtime. "They're demanding unconditional surrender, complete cessation of hostilities, immediate stand-down of all military forces, and they want us to prepare for cultural integration into the galactic hegemony." Chen's jaw tightened. The phrase cultural integration had a distinctly ominous ring to it. Any indication of their intentions towards civilian populations? Nothing specific, ma'am. The message is mostly focused on their technological superiority and our inevitable defeat. They've included detailed scans of our defensive capabilities alongside their own fleet composition. It's... He paused, swallowing hard. It's not encouraging, Admiral. Through the observation ports, Earth hung like a blue marble against the starfield, its surface dotted with the lights of 7 billion human souls. Chen had sworn an oath to protect those lives regardless of the odds. Send our response, Lieutenant. All frequencies, maximum broadcast power. What should I tell them, ma'am? Admiral Chen straightened, her weathered hands clasped behind her back. Tell them that humanity respectfully declines their generous offer. Back aboard the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zefix reviewed the human response with something approaching bewilderment. The translation matrix had run the message through 17 different algorithms, each one arriving at the same impossible conclusion. They refused. Zefix's voice carried harmonics that his crew recognized as profound confusion. Display the tactical assessment again. The holographic projection materialized between them, showing the overwhelming disparity in numbers, technology, and firepower. By every metric, human resistance was not just futile. It was mathematically impossible to sustain for more than a few hours. Perhaps there was a translation error, suggested Commander Vaxis. Surely no species would choose annihilation over reasonable subjugation terms. Run a full spectrum analysis of their communications. Check for hidden meanings, cultural context, anything that might explain this irrational behavior. Minutes passed while the ship's xenological computers processed human communication patterns, social structures, and historical data gathered from long-range surveillance. When the results appeared, Zefix's exoskeleton actually changed color, a physiological response his species displayed when confronted with something genuinely incomprehensible. Admiral, Vaxis' voice carried undertones of disbelief. According to this analysis, humans have a documented history of continuing to fight even when facing mathematically certain defeat. Their historical records contain thousands of examples. That's impossible. No rational species would waste resources on hopeless battles. End quote. The computer identifies this behavior as spite, stubbornness, and refusal to accept reality.
Apparently humans often fight harder when the odds are worst.
Vaxis paused, mandibles clicking uncertainly. There's a human military doctrine called making them pay for every inch. It appears they deliberately make victory as costly as possible for their enemies, regardless of their own survival chances. Zephyx contemplated this information while studying the human defensive formations. Their ships had arranged themselves in overlapping fields of fire, maximizing potential damage to any attacking force. It was tactically sound, but ultimately pointless against such overwhelming superiority. Very well. Perhaps a demonstration of our capabilities will help them understand reality. Target their outermost defensive line. Minimum force, just enough to eliminate 50 ships cleanly. The hegemony's forward elements glided into attack formation, their movements precise and coordinated. Quantum disruptors charged with a distinctive harmonic whine that had terrified countless species across the galaxy. These weapons could tear apart matter at the subatomic level, leaving nothing but expanding clouds of constituent particles. Admiral Chen watched the alien vessels approach with calculated calm. All ships, this is Terra Command. Execute Wolf Protocol. Repeat, execute Wolf Protocol immediately. Across the human fleet, captains acknowledged the order with tight voices. The Wolf Protocol, named after an ancient Earth military strategist, was humanity's answer to overwhelming enemy superiority. If you can't win, make sure winning hurts so badly that victory becomes meaningless. The first hegemony disruptor beams lanced through space, aimed at humanity's oldest destroyer, the USS Defiance. Captain Martinez, a 20-year veteran with 3 children back on Earth, smiled grimly as the alien energy weapon tore into his ship's hull. Ramming speed, he ordered quietly. All hands brace for impact. The Defiance didn't explode cleanly like the hegemony expected. Instead, her fusion reactor went critical while her captain guided the dying ship directly into the nearest alien vessel. The combined detonation created an expanding sphere of nuclear fire that consumed 2 more hegemony ships and severely damaged a 4th. Similar scenes played out across the battle line as human captains sacrificed their vessels in kamikaze attacks that defied all reasonable tactical doctrine. Ships that should have died quietly instead became guided missiles, their crews singing ancient battle songs as they drove burning hulks into enemy formations. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zephyx stared at the tactical displays in mounting disbelief. How many ships did we lose in that exchange? 17 destroyed, 23 damaged. Commander Vaxis reported, her voice hollow with shock. We eliminated 51 human vessels as planned, but they somehow destroyed or disabled 40 of our ships in the process. That's impossible. Our shields should have prevented their kinetic impacts. The humans overloaded their reactor cores before impact, Admiral. The energy release was unexpected. Our shields are designed to deflect directed energy weapons, not nuclear explosions at point-blank range. Zephyx's claws scratched against the command console as he processed this information. In 300 years of conquest, no enemy had ever achieved anything approaching a 1-to-1 kill ratio against hegemony forces. These primitive humans had somehow managed nearly equal exchange rates using nothing but crude fusion bombs and suicidal determination. Adjust tactics, increase engagement range. Target them from maximum distance where their ramming attacks can't reach us. The hegemony fleet pulled back, extending the range to several thousand kilometers. At this distance, human ships would need several minutes to close for ramming attacks, giving the aliens plenty of time to destroy them safely. Admiral Chen studied the enemy withdrawal with bitter satisfaction. Humanity's first blood had cost them 50 ships, but they'd proven something important. Aliens could die just like anyone else. They're pulling back, reported her tactical officer. Looks like they're going to try long-range bombardment. Expected. Execute Morrison Protocol. All ships prepare for dispersal pattern Gamma. The human fleet scattered like seeds on the wind, individual ships racing away from each other at maximum acceleration. What had been a concentrated defensive line became hundreds of separate, unpredictable targets moving in chaotic patterns throughout Earth's orbital space.
What are they doing?
Zephyx demanded, as human ships spread across thousands of cubic kilometers of space. This formation has no tactical coherence. Unknown, Admiral. They appear to be randomizing their positions and flight paths. Our targeting computers cannot establish reliable firing solutions. Then we target them individually. Begin systematic destruction of isolated vessels. The hegemony's quantum disruptors reached out across space, picking off human ships one by one. But the scattered formation meant each kill required separate targeting solutions, individual attack runs, and precious time. Meanwhile, the surviving human vessels continued their erratic movements, some racing toward the planet, others heading for deep space, a few actually flying directly toward the hegemony fleet in apparent suicide runs. Hours passed as the alien fleet methodically hunted down scattered human ships. But for every vessel they destroyed, 3 more seemed to slip past their defensive perimeter. Admiral Chen's dispersal protocol was designed around a simple principle. If you can't stop them, make them work for every victory. Admiral, Commander Vax's voice carried notes of growing concern. Human vessels are approaching Earth's surface. Should we intercept them? Zefix studied the tactical display, watching dozens of human ships diving toward their homeworld's atmosphere. They're retreating to their planet? Excellent. We can handle surface bombardment more efficiently than this running battle. Sir, I'm also detecting strange energy readings from Earth's moon and several asteroid positions. The humans appear to have been quite busy during our initial engagement. Before Zefix could respond, space around the hegemony fleet suddenly erupted with precisely targeted missile barrages. Hidden weapons platforms built into asteroids and concealed on Luna's dark side had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Hundreds of nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the alien formation, their primitive guidance systems locked onto engine signatures and energy emissions. The hegemony's defensive systems activated automatically, plasma cannons tracking and destroying incoming missiles with methodical efficiency. But there were so many projectiles that even advanced alien technology couldn't stop them all. Nuclear flowers bloomed throughout the fleet as human missiles found their targets, adding radiation and debris to an increasingly chaotic battlefield. Damage report! Zefix's harmonics had shifted to what humans would recognize as barely controlled fury. 43 ships destroyed, 97 damaged. The humans had weapons platforms positioned throughout the system. Admiral, our intelligence was incomplete. Admiral Chen monitored the battle from Earth's surface, having transferred her flag to the buried command center beneath the North American Defense Complex. Through quantum entanglement communicators, she maintained contact with the surviving ships of her scattered fleet. Ma'am, we've confirmed hits on over 100 enemy vessels, reported her tactical coordinator. The Morrison protocol worked better than expected. They couldn't track our dispersed forces while dealing with the hidden missile batteries. Outstanding. Begin Phase 3. Signal all remaining ships to execute Henderson Protocol. Throughout Earth's orbital space, the surviving human vessels received their new orders. Instead of continuing the running battle, they would regroup at predetermined coordinates for one final coordinated assault. Not against the hegemony fleet, that would be suicide. Instead, they would target the alien flagship directly. Every military leader in human history understood one fundamental truth: cut off the head and the body dies. If they could eliminate the hegemony's command structure, the remaining alien forces might hesitate long enough for Earth's reinforcements to arrive from the outer colonies. Admiral Zefix watched in growing disbelief as the scattered human ships suddenly changed course, converging on his position with single-minded determination. They're targeting the Eternal Dominion directly. All escorts, intercept immediately. But the humans had timed their approach perfectly. The hegemony's escort vessels were scattered across thousands of kilometers, hunting down the last refugee ships fleeing toward Earth's outer planets. By the time they could reposition to protect their flagship, the human attack would already be underway. USS Thermopylae, HMS Indomitable, CNSS Beijing, and dozens of other surviving ships raced toward the alien command vessel, their crews singing ancient battle hymns as they prepared for humanity's final gambit. Each ship carried enough nuclear warheads to crack a small moon, and every captain had volunteered for what amounted to a suicide mission. Sir? Commander Vax's voice had dropped to terrified whispers. They're not trying to win the battle, they're trying to kill us personally. Admiral Zefix stared at the approaching human vessels, finally beginning to understand what his forces had stumbled into. This wasn't a conventional war between civilized species fighting for territory or resources. These humans were fighting for something far more dangerous, pure, undiluted survival. Emergency jump! Get us out of here immediately. Sir, jumping this close to a planet will damage our navigation systems. Do it. The Eternal Dominion vanished in a flash of twisted space-time just as the human ships reached attack range. Their nuclear warheads detonated in empty vacuum, creating a brief artificial sun that illuminated the entire battlefield, but the damage was done. For the first time in 300 years, the Galactic Hegemony's Supreme Commander had been forced to flee from an inferior enemy. Word of this unprecedented defeat would spread throughout the galaxy, encouraging resistance among dozens of subject species. Admiral Chen smiled grimly as she reviewed the battle reports. Earth had lost nearly 200 ships and thousands of brave crew members. The alien fleet was still largely intact, and they would certainly return with reinforcements. But humanity had proven something important today. They could fight back. They could make the hegemony bleed. And most importantly, they had shown the entire galaxy that the supposedly invincible alien empire could be forced to retreat. The war was just beginning, and Admiral Zephyx was beginning to suspect that his species had awakened something far more dangerous than they understood. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to survive. And when survival was on the line, humans became utterly, terrifyingly unpredictable. As the alien fleet regrouped beyond Earth's orbital space, preparing for their next assault, they had no idea that humanity's real strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their complete inability to recognize when they were supposed to give up. 3 weeks after the initial battle, Admiral Zephyx stood before the Hegemony High Council, his crystalline exoskeleton dim with humiliation. The circular chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime contained representatives from every major species in the Galactic Empire, their various forms arranged in perfect hierarchical order. Supreme Coordinator Melthus, whose gaseous form shimmered within a containment field, spoke with harmonics that resonated through the chamber's atmospheric processes. Explain to us, Admiral, how a primitive species with 300 obsolete vessels managed to force the retreat of our primary fleet. Honored Coordinator, the humans employed unconventional tactics that our strategic algorithms had not anticipated. Their complete disregard for military logic and self-preservation created variables that our computers could not properly calculate. Council of Orthac, representing the militant Kresh Empire, clicked his armored mandibles in contempt. You speak of humans as if they possess some mystical power. They are flesh and bone, just like any other species we have absorbed. Karalev Death Accords. With respect, Counselor, that assessment may be incorrect. Zephyx activated the chamber's holographic display, showing recordings from the battle. Observed their tactical responses. The assembled dignitaries watched human ships transform into guided missiles, their crews choosing certain death over surrender. Ships that should have exploded cleanly instead became nuclear rams, their commanders guiding burning hulks into alien formations with surgical precision. This behavior pattern is consistent throughout human history, Zephyx continued. Our xenological analysis reveals thousands of documented cases where humans continued fighting despite mathematical certainty of defeat. They appear to possess some form of collective insanity that prevents them from recognizing hopeless situations. Supreme Coordinator Melfi's pulsed with colors indicating deep thought. Perhaps this explains their rapid technological advancement. A species that refuses to accept limitations might achieve breakthroughs that rational minds would consider impossible. Indeed, Honored Coordinator. Human technological development follows no logical progression. They achieved nuclear weapons before developing efficient computers, created faster-than-light travel without understanding quantum mechanics, and somehow maintained stable societies despite constant internal conflicts. Council of Orthac species had conquered 17 worlds through methodical, overwhelming force. The idea that any enemy might require special consideration struck him as weakness. Increase fleet strength and begin systematic orbital bombardment. Reduce their industrial capacity to ash, then demand surrender. That approach may prove complicated, Zephyx admitted reluctantly. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans have already begun evacuating their industrial infrastructure. The holographic display shifted, showing reconnaissance images of Earth's major cities. Massive transport ships were ferrying entire factory complexes into space, while civilian populations relocated to underground facilities that hadn't existed 3 weeks earlier. How is this possible? Melfi's gaseous form flickered with confusion. Our initial survey showed typical planetary infrastructure. Fixed installations, surface cities, centralized manufacturing. Humans appear to be naturally nomadic, Honored Coordinator. Their historical records show a species that migrated across their entire planet multiple times, adapting to any environment they encountered. When faced with overwhelming force, their instinct is not to surrender but to scatter and rebuild elsewhere. General Carthan of the Hegemony Military Council leaned forward, his reptilian features creased with concern. Are you saying they're abandoning their homeworld? Not abandoning, General, dispersing. Our long-range sensors have detected massive construction projects throughout their star system. Asteroid mining operations, orbital habitats, mobile shipyards. They're transforming their entire civilization into something we've never encountered before. Zephyx manipulated the display, showing new images that had arrived that morning. Where Earth had once possessed 300 ships, human construction yards were now producing vessels at an impossible rate. The designs had evolved too, incorporating lessons learned from the initial battle. These new ships carry no crew quarters, he explained. No life support systems, no recreational facilities. They're essentially guided missiles with faster-than-light capability. Our tactical computers estimate they can produce 10 such vessels for every traditional warship. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humans weren't trying to match hegemony technology. They were changing the rules of warfare entirely. On Europa Station, deep within Jupiter's radiation-soaked magnetosphere, Admiral Chen reviewed construction reports with mixed satisfaction and concern. Humanity's emergency industrial mobilization had exceeded every expectation, but the costs were staggering. Production is ahead of schedule across all facilities, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, her Chief of Industrial Operations. We're launching completed hulls every 6 hours now, but we're burning through raw materials faster than the mining operations can supply them. How long can we maintain this production rate? 8 months at current consumption levels. Maybe 10 if we strip mine the outer asteroid belt completely. Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays showing humanity's new fleet composition. Each ship was a masterpiece of simplified engineering. A fusion reactor, a faster-than-light drive, and enough nuclear warheads to crack a small moon. No crew, no complex systems, no expensive defensive measures, pure, concentrated, destructive potential. And the AI development? Revolutionary. The aliens think these are suicide vessels because they can't detect life signs aboard them. They have no idea we've created artificial intelligence systems specifically designed for ship-to-ship combat. Each drone ship carried a quantum computer loaded with the combined tactical knowledge of every human military commander in history. Unlike biological crews, these artificial minds felt no fear, no hesitation, and no instinct for self-preservation beyond completing their assigned mission. Status on the Mars project? Dr. Kim's expression darkened. The terraforming teams are working around the clock, but transforming an entire planet takes time. We might have breathable atmosphere in major dome cities within 2 years, but full planetary conversion will require decades. We may not have decades. What about the deep space colonies? Better news there. The generation ships reached Alpha Centauri last week and confirmed suitable worlds for settlement. If worst comes to worst, we can evacuate Earth's population to multiple star systems. The aliens might destroy our homeworld, but they can't eliminate our species. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Humanity's survival strategy was simple in concept but staggering in scope, become too dispersed to destroy completely. If they could spread across enough worlds, through enough star systems, then no single defeat could threaten their species' existence. What about the other project? The one we don't discuss in official reports? Dr. Kim glanced around the secure briefing room before responding. Project Prometheus is ahead of schedule. We should have working prototypes within 6 weeks. Good. Because our intelligence suggests the aliens are planning something ambitious for their next assault. 3 months later, Admiral Zephyx led a fleet of 5,000 vessels toward Earth, confident that overwhelming numbers would succeed where precision tactics had failed. The Hegemony High Council had authorized complete destruction of human industrial capacity, followed by systematic bombardment of population centers until surrender became inevitable. Long-range sensors are detecting massive changes to the human defensive grid, reported Commander Vaxis. They've deployed some form of orbital network around their entire star system. The tactical display materialized, showing an incomprehensible web of energy signatures, artificial structures, and mobile platforms. Where Earth had once maintained a simple defensive perimeter, humans had somehow transformed their entire solar system into a fortified maze. Analysis complete, Admiral. We're detecting over 50,000 individual installations, ranging from automated weapons platforms to mobile shipyards. Many appear to be connected by some form of instantaneous communication network. Zephyx studied the readings with growing unease. 50,000 installations? How did they construct so much infrastructure in 3 months? Unknown, sir. The scale of construction exceeds anything in our historical records. They appear to have mobilized their entire civilization for military production. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had learned valuable lessons from their species' own history. When faced with existential threats, humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to completely transform their society in response to crisis. During Earth's Second World War, Human nations had converted entire civilian economies to military production within months. Automobile factories became aircraft manufacturers, civilian research became weapons development, and entire populations dedicated themselves to supporting the war effort. Now they had done the same thing on an interstellar scale. "Sir," Commander Vaxis's voice carried undertones of concern. "We're receiving a transmission from the humans." Admiral Zefix's mandibles clicked irritably. "Another refusal to surrender, no doubt. Display the message." The holographic projector activated, showing Admiral Chen standing in what appeared to be a massive underground complex. Behind her, humans worked frantically at computer terminals while klaxons wailed in the background. "Admiral Zefix of the Galactic Hegemony." Chen's voice was calm despite the chaos around her. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen, speaking for the United Earth Defense Command. We have received your ultimatum demanding unconditional surrender." "Finally," Zefix muttered. "Perhaps they've developed some rationality." "We respectfully decline," Chen continued. "However, we would like to make you an offer in return." Zefix's exoskeleton flickered with confusion. "An offer? What could a primitive species possibly offer the galactic hegemony?" "Safe passage out of our solar system." Chen's expression remained perfectly serious. "Leave now, and we will allow your fleet to withdraw without interference. Continue this attack, and we will demonstrate why humanity survived as the dominant predator on a death world for 2 million years. Commander Vax's mandibles chattered with what humans would recognize as nervous laughter. "They're threatening us? With what?" "Their entire civilization could not construct enough vessels to match our fleet strength." But Admiral Zefix was studying the tactical displays more carefully. Something about the human defensive grid bothered him, though he couldn't identify exactly what. The energy signatures were wrong somehow. Too organized, too precisely coordinated. "Begin systematic bombardment of their outer installations," he ordered. "But maintain maximum defensive readiness." These humans have proven unpredictable. The hegemony fleet advanced into Earth's solar system, their plasma cannons and quantum disruptors charging for the devastating bombardment that would finally break human resistance. 5,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships against a species that had achieved interstellar flight less than a century ago. The first indication that something was wrong came when the fleet's navigation systems began reporting impossible readings. "Sir?" Commander Vax's voice had risen to what humans would recognize as barely controlled panic. "Our sensors are detecting over 200,000 individual targets throughout the system. The humans, they appear to have built an entire fleet while we were mobilizing our forces." "That's impossible. No species can construct vessels that quickly." "Sir, I don't think these are traditional ships. The energy signatures are all wrong. No life support, no crew quarters, no defensive systems beyond basic shielding. They're essentially flying bombs with faster-than-light capability." Zefix stared at the tactical display in growing horror. Humanity hadn't just built a fleet, they had created a swarm of AI-controlled missiles, each one capable of independent tactical thinking and completely expendable in combat. "How many?" 250,000 confirmed targets, Admiral. Possibly more hidden throughout the asteroid belt and outer planets. Before Zefix could respond, space around his fleet erupted into chaos. The human AI swarm attacked from every direction simultaneously, their movements perfectly coordinated despite being spread across billions of cubic kilometers. Unlike biological crews, these artificial minds felt no confusion, no fear, and no instinct for self-preservation. They simply executed their programming with mechanical precision. Destroy the enemy, regardless of cost. Hegemony point defense systems activated automatically. Plasma cannons tracking and destroying incoming drones with methodical efficiency. But there were simply too many targets. For every drone destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place. "Damage report. We're losing ships faster than our defenses can engage targets, Admiral. The drones are using swarming tactics, overwhelming our defensive systems through sheer numbers." Admiral Zefix watched his magnificent fleet being torn apart by what amounted to mechanical insects. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being destroyed by crude fusion bombs guided by artificial minds that knew only one imperative: attack. "Emergency withdrawal. All ships immediate retreat to Rally Point 7. But the human swarm had anticipated this response. As the hegemony fleet turned to flee, they found their escape routes blocked by additional waves of AI-controlled vessels. The mechanical minds had studied every tactical manual in human history, learning from species that have been fighting wars for millennia. "Sir, our withdrawal is blocked. They've positioned drones along every possible escape vector." Zephix's species had never encountered anything like this. An enemy that could coordinate hundreds of thousands of individual units without any central command structure being vulnerable to decapitation strikes. Each drone operated independently while somehow maintaining perfect tactical coordination. How are they controlling so many units simultaneously? Unknown, Admiral. There appears to be no central command chip. Each drone is making independent tactical decisions while somehow maintaining perfect formation integrity. What the aliens couldn't comprehend was that humans had solved the problem of coordinated mass tactics through their greatest strength, their complete inability to think like rational, civilized beings. Instead of creating a hierarchical command structure that could be disrupted, humanity had built their AI swarm around the concept of emergence. Simple rules followed by individual units that created complex coordinated behavior without central control. Each drone followed 3 basic imperatives: stay close to your neighbors, avoid collisions, and attack the nearest enemy. When multiplied by 200,000 individual units, these simple rules created a collective intelligence that could outmaneuver any conventional fleet. Hours passed as the hegemony fleet fought desperately against the human swarm. Admiral Zephix watched his forces dwindle from 5,000 ships to 3,000, then 2,000, then barely 1,000 survivors clustered around his flagship. "Sir, we're detecting another transmission from the humans."
Admiral Chen appeared again, but this time she was standing on the observation deck of a massive orbital facility.
Through the windows behind her, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the starfield, apparently untouched despite the massive battle raging throughout the solar system. Admiral Zephix, Chen's voice carried overtones of genuine regret. "This is your final opportunity to withdraw. Leave our star system now, and the remaining vessels in your fleet will be permitted to depart safely." Zephix stared at the transmission with something approaching respect. Despite being outnumbered 50-1 at the start of this battle, the humans had somehow reversed the tactical situation completely. His magnificent fleet was trapped, surrounded, and being systematically destroyed by mechanical minds that felt no emotion beyond the satisfaction of completing their programming.
How? He whispered.
How did a primitive species accomplish this? Admiral Chen seemed to hear the question despite the communication delay. "You made the same mistake that every predator makes when they encounter humanity for the first time, Admiral. You assumed we were prey." The transmission continued, and Chen's expression grew harder. "Humans aren't prey, Admiral Zephix. We're persistence hunters. We evolved to chase our food across entire continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. When something threatens our survival, we don't surrender. We hunt it until it stops moving." Zephix looked around his devastated fleet, finally understanding what his species had awakened. The galactic hegemony had spent 300 years conquering civilized species that understood concepts like acceptable losses, strategic withdrawal, and rational surrender. Humans understood none of those concepts. They only understood one thing: when threatened, pursue the threat until either you or it stops existing. "All ships," Zephix transmitted quietly. "Emergency jump to home coordinates. Maximum speed." The surviving hegemony vessels vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth's solar system to the mechanical swarm that had destroyed the galaxy's most powerful fleet, using nothing but superior numbers and complete disregard for conventional tactical thinking. Admiral Chen watched the alien fleet retreat with grim satisfaction. Humanity had won their second victory, but the costs were mounting rapidly. The AI swarm had consumed nearly every available resource in the solar system, and Earth's population was living on emergency rations, while industrial production focused entirely on military needs. "Status report," she ordered. 230,000 drones expended, Admiral. Alien casualties estimated at over 4,000 ships destroyed. Our industrial capacity is depleted, but we've proven that swarm tactics can defeat conventional fleet actions. Excellent. Begin Phase 2 of the war plan. If the aliens want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Chen turned to gaze at Earth through the observation windows, knowing that this victory was only the beginning. The galactic hegemony would return with greater numbers, better tactics, and countermeasures designed specifically to defeat human swarm techniques. But humans had always been adaptable. When one strategy stopped working, they simply invented a new one. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened a species that had spent 2 million years adapting to survive in environments that would kill anything else. The war was escalating, and Admiral Zephix was beginning to suspect that his species had made a fundamental error in judgment. They hadn't just awakened a sleeping predator, they had challenged a species whose entire evolutionary history was based on turning environmental threats into survival advantages. And humans were very, very good at turning threats into opportunities. 6 months after the drone swarm victory, the Galactic Hegemony High Council convened an emergency session for the third time since first contact with humanity. The circular chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with barely contained panic as representatives from 400 subject species watched Supreme Coordinator Melthi's pace within his containment field. The situation has deteriorated beyond all acceptable parameters, Melthi's announced, his gaseous form flickering with agitated colors.
Human forces have appeared in 17 different star systems, conducting what they term raiding operations against our industrial infrastructure.
Counselor Vorthak's armored mandibles ground together audibly. 17 systems?
How is that possible? Our intelligence indicated they possessed fewer than 50 faster-than-light-capable vessels. Admiral Zephyx, his crystalline exoskeleton now bearing visible stress fractures from recent battles, activated the chamber's holographic display. The humans have abandoned conventional fleet tactics entirely. They're using small groups of heavily modified civilian vessels to strike our supply lines, communication relays, and isolated outposts. The display showed tactical recordings from the most recent attacks. Human ships appeared without warning, destroyed their targets with ruthless efficiency, then vanished into faster-than-light travel before reinforcements could arrive. What made the attacks particularly disturbing was their apparent randomness. There was no discernible strategic pattern to target selection. They're not trying to capture territory, Zephyx continued. They're deliberately creating chaos throughout our supply networks, manufacturing facilities, mining operations, communication relays, anything that keeps our empire functioning efficiently. General Carthan studied the tactical data with growing unease. These attack patterns make no military sense. They're expending significant resources to damage targets with minimal strategic value. That's exactly what makes them so effective, Zephyx replied grimly. We can't predict their next move, because their tactics follow no rational strategic doctrine. They appear to be attacking whatever targets they can reach, regardless of military importance. What the hegemony leadership failed to understand was that humanity's raiding strategy drew inspiration from their species' own historical experience with asymmetric warfare. When faced with superior conventional forces, humans had repeatedly demonstrated their ability to transform organized conflicts into chaotic, unpredictable struggles that favored adaptability over raw strength. The human raiders weren't trying to defeat the hegemony through conventional military victory. They were trying to make governance impossible by introducing so much uncertainty and chaos that the Empire's carefully managed systems would collapse under their own complexity. Captain Maria Santos guided her modified freighter Lucky Strike through the Keth system's outer asteroid belt, her crew scanning for hegemony mining installations. The ship bore little resemblance to its original civilian configuration. External cargo pods had been replaced with missile launchers, the passenger compartments converted into electronic warfare suites, and the entire vessel painted in radar-absorbing compounds. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported her sensor operator. Automated mining platform, standard hegemony configuration. No escort vessels detected. Time to target? 18 minutes at current velocity. The platform shields appear to be civilian grade. Our missiles should punch through easily. Captain Santos nodded, studying the tactical display. The mining platform was extracting rare metals essential for hegemony ship construction, but destroying it wouldn't significantly impact the Empire's military capability. That wasn't the point. The point was to force the aliens to dedicate resources protecting every single installation throughout their territory, spreading their forces so thin that effective defense became impossible. All stations prepare for attack run. Remember, we're in and out within 5 minutes. If we detect any incoming reinforcements, we abort immediately. The Lucky Strike accelerated towards its target. Missile tubes armed in electronic warfare systems cycling through alien communication frequencies. This would be their 15th successful raid in 2 months, each one carefully documented and broadcast throughout human space as proof that the supposedly invincible hegemony could be hurt. Aboard the hegemony mining platform Efficient Extraction, Supervisor Kelvix received the proximity alert with something approaching resignation. His species, the methodical Gordani, had operated mining installations throughout hegemony space for over 2 centuries without ever needing defensive systems. Now every platform in his sector had been equipped with military-grade shields, automated defense turrets, and emergency communication systems linked directly to fleet headquarters. The costs were staggering, but human raiders had already destroyed 8 facilities in the past month. Incoming vessels, unknown configuration, reported his security officer. Single ship, moderate mass, approaching at high velocity. Transmit surrender demands and alert fleet command. Kelvix ordered wearily. Raise shields and begin evacuation procedures. The human response was swift and predictable. Instead of acknowledging the surrender transmission, the attacking vessel simply launched a barrage of nuclear-tipped missiles while jamming all communication frequencies. The platform shields held for approximately 30 seconds before failing catastrophically. Efficient extraction died in a brief nuclear flare, taking 17 hegemony citizens with it. The attacking vessel was already jumping to faster-than-light travel before the explosion's electromagnetic pulse finished propagating through local space. "Sir," the communications officer on the Lucky Strike reported as they entered hyperspace, "we're receiving multiple priority transmissions from Earth Command. Admiral Chen requests immediate return to base." Captain Santos frowned. Emergency recalls usually meant either very good news or very bad news, and their recent raiding success suggested this was probably the latter. Set course for Lunar Station. Best possible speed. 12 hours later, Captain Santos stood in Admiral Chen's briefing room, alongside 24 other raider captains, studying intelligence reports that made her blood run cold. The holographic displays showed hegemony fleet movements throughout their territory, massive formations of ships converging on human-controlled space. "Reconnaissance suggests they're assembling a fleet of unprecedented size," Admiral Chen announced grimly. "Current estimates indicate over 20,000 vessels, including their most advanced battleships." Captain Rodriguez of the modified cruiser Gorilla whistled softly. 20,000 ships? That's larger than their entire standing navy. Intelligence believes they're drawing vessels from every sector in their empire. They appear to have decided that humanity represents an existential threat requiring complete military commitment. The assembled captains exchanged worried glances. Humanity's raiding strategy had been extraordinarily successful. But success came with a price. They had finally convinced the galactic hegemony to take them seriously. "What's our defensive capacity?" asked Captain Thompson of the fast attack ship Hornet's Nest. "Problematic, Dr. Brownie," Kim admitted from her position near the tactical displays. "Our drone swarm strategy depleted most available raw materials. We've got perhaps 50,000 AI-controlled vessels operational, but that's still a 4-to-1 disadvantage against conventional forces." Admiral Chen studied the grim faces around the table. These men and women had volunteered for what amounted to suicide missions, striking deep into enemy territory with minimal support and no hope of rescue if things went wrong. They deserved honesty about what was coming. The hegemony appears to have learned from their previous encounters with us. This fleet includes specialized anti-swarm vessels, electronic warfare ships designed to disrupt AI coordination, and enough firepower to sterilize Earth's entire orbital infrastructure. "So what's the plan?" Captain Santos asked quietly. "Project Prometheus has entered final testing. If it works, we might have a chance. If it doesn't," Admiral Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. "If it doesn't, we implement the Madagascar Protocol." Several captains visibly paled. The Madagascar Protocol was humanity's final contingency plan. Complete evacuation of Earth and the solar system, followed by dispersal across multiple star systems to ensure species survival. It would mean abandoning their homeworld permanently. "How long until the hegemony fleet arrives?" 6 weeks, maybe 8 if we're extremely lucky. Captain Santos looked around the room, seeing determination mixed with fear on every face. These people had signed up to defend humanity against impossible odds, but the scope of what they were facing was almost beyond comprehension. "What do you need us to do, Admiral?" "Continue raiding operations, but shift targets to maximum disruption objectives. We need to convince the hegemony that maintaining their empire requires constant, overwhelming force throughout their territory. Make them choose between defending everything or conquering us." The meeting concluded with tactical assignments and updated target lists, but Captain Santos lingered after the others departed.
"Admiral, can I ask you something?"
Of course, Maria. Do you really think we can win this? Admiral Chen considered the question carefully.
Win?
That depends on how you define victory. Can we defeat a 20,000-ship fleet in conventional battle? Almost certainly not. Can we make the cost of conquering humanity so high that the hegemony decides to look for easier targets? That's a different question entirely. You're talking about making ourselves too expensive to be worth conquering. Exactly. Humans have always been survivors, Maria. We don't need to win every battle. We just need to make sure our species continues existing. Sometimes that means fighting. Sometimes it means running. Sometimes it means making the alternative so unpleasant that enemies decide to leave us alone. Captain Santos nodded slowly. And if Project Prometheus doesn't work, then we run. The generation ships are already prepared, the colony sites are surveyed, and the industrial infrastructure can be packed and moved within weeks. Humanity survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and global pandemics by being adaptable. We can survive this too. 3 weeks later, Admiral Zephyx stood on the command deck of the newly commissioned super dreadnought Galaxy's Judgment, watching 20,000 hegemony vessels arrange themselves in the most massive military formation ever assembled. Ships from every corner of the Empire had answered the High Council's summons, creating a fleet that could crack planets and boil away atmospheres. Final tactical briefing, Admiral. Commander Vaxis reported, her mandibles clicking with nervous energy, despite the overwhelming force at their disposal. Human defensive capabilities appear unchanged since our last encounter. Approximately 50,000 AI-controlled drones, scattered defensive installations throughout their star system, and unknown quantities of hidden weapons platforms. Any indication of new tactical developments? Negative, sir. Long-range reconnaissance suggests they're continuing the same swarm-based defensive strategy that proved effective against our previous fleets. Zephyx studied the tactical projections with satisfaction. The hegemony's new anti-swarm vessels carried specialized jamming equipment designed to disrupt AI coordination protocols. Additional electronic warfare ships would create interference patterns that should prevent human drones from maintaining their devastating collective coordination. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. Admiral Chen appeared on the main display, standing in what looked like the same underground command bunker she'd used during their previous encounters. Behind her, human technicians worked frantically at computer terminals, while alert klaxons sounded in the background. Admiral Zephyx. Chen's voice was calm despite the obvious chaos around her. I see you've brought friends. Admiral Chen, this is your final opportunity to surrender unconditionally. The galactic hegemony has assembled sufficient force to eliminate your entire civilization. Resistance is mathematically impossible. You know, Admiral, you've said that before. Several times, actually. Chen's expression remained perfectly composed. It didn't work out well for you then either. This time will be different. We have developed countermeasures for your swarm tactics and electronic warfare capabilities to disrupt your AI coordination. Your drones will be unable to maintain formation integrity against our jamming systems. That's actually a pretty good plan, Chen admitted with what appeared to be genuine respect. Attacking our coordination networks instead of trying to outgun us directly. Smart thinking. Admiral Zephyx's exoskeleton flickered with confusion. You seem remarkably calm for someone facing annihilation. Well, that's because you've made the same mistake again, Admiral. You're assuming we're going to fight the same way we did last time. Before Zephyx could respond, space around the hegemony fleet began to shimmer with strange energy patterns. The tactical displays registered massive power buildups throughout Earth's solar system, but the readings made no sense. The energy signatures were too concentrated, too focused for any known weapons technology. Sir, Commander Vaxis's voice had risen to barely controlled panic. We're detecting unprecedented energy readings from the human installations. Whatever they're powering up, it's beyond anything in our technological database. Admiral Chen smiled grimly from the transmission screen. Admiral Zephyx, allow me to introduce you to humanity's latest tactical innovation. We call it Project Prometheus. The energy signatures suddenly stabilized, and the hegemony fleet found themselves staring at something that defied their understanding of physics. Throughout Earth's solar system, massive installations were generating what could only be described as controlled artificial stars. Fusion reactions contained within magnetic fields and focused into coherent energy streams. What you're looking at, Chen continued, is the weaponization of stellar engineering. We've learned to create miniature suns on demand and focus their energy output into directed beams. Each installation generates approximately 1% of our home star's energy output. Zephyx stared at the readings in horror. That's impossible. No species has ever achieved controlled stellar manipulation on such a scale. No rational species, Chen corrected. But humans aren't particularly rational, Admiral. When faced with extinction, we tend to try things that sensible civilizations would consider insane. The first beam lanced across space, striking the hegemony fleet's forward elements with the focused energy of a small star. Ships that had survived countless battles simply vaporized, their matter converted to expanding plasma clouds. The beam swept across the formation like a searchlight, destroying everything it touched. Evasive maneuvers, Zephyx ordered desperately. All ships, scatter formation immediately. But the artificial stars were positioned throughout Earth's entire solar system, creating overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible approach vector. As the hegemony fleet tried to disperse, additional beams activated, carving through their formations with surgical precision. "This is impossible," Commander Vaxis whispered. "The energy requirements alone should be beyond any planetary civilization." Admiral Chen's transmission continued, her voice carrying undertones of grim satisfaction. "The funny thing about humans, Admiral, is that we've always been good at turning our problems into solutions. You forced us to mobilize our entire civilization for war production, so we did. We converted our entire industrial capacity to military applications. Every manufacturing facility, every research laboratory, every educational institution, all focused on a single objective, making sure that attacking humanity costs more than any rational civilization would be willing to pay." The third artificial starbeam swept across the hegemony fleet's center formation, destroying another 100 ships in seconds. Admiral Zephyx watched his magnificent armada being systematically dismantled by weapons that shouldn't have been possible to construct, let alone deploy effectively. "How many installations do you have?" he asked quietly. "Enough," Chen replied. "We had 6 months to prepare, Admiral. 6 months to turn our entire star system into the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Every asteroid, every moon, every stable orbit now contains weapons platforms capable of generating stellar-level energy outputs." The truth was even more staggering than Admiral Chen admitted. Humanity hadn't just built weapons, they had fundamentally transformed their entire approach to warfare. Instead of trying to match alien technology, they had leaped ahead by several centuries, creating systems that even advanced civilizations would require generations to develop. "Sir, we need to withdraw immediately," Commander Vaxis urged. "Our losses are approaching 50% and climbing." Admiral Zephyx stared at the tactical displays showing his fleet's systematic destruction. 20,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled, being defeated by stationary installations that generated energy outputs comparable to natural stars. All ships, emergency withdrawal, maximum speed to rally point Alpha. The surviving hegemony vessels began jumping to faster than light travel, abandoning the battle space to the humans and their impossible weapons. But as they prepared to flee, Admiral Chen's voice cut across all communication channels. "Admiral Zephyx, you have 1 hour to remove all hegemony forces from Earth's local stellar group. Any alien vessels detected within 10 light-years of our territory after that deadline will be engaged and destroyed." "You're threatening to pursue us?" Zephyx's voice carried harmonics of disbelief. "With what?" "Those installations are obviously stationary defensive systems." Admiral Chen's smile was particularly unpleasant. "Admiral, did you really think we'd spend 6 months building stellar engineering technology without figuring out how to make it mobile?" As if to emphasize the point, new contacts began appearing on the hegemony fleet's sensors. Ships unlike anything in their database, massive vessels built around controlled fusion reactors, their hulls bristling with focused energy projectors. Mobile stellar artillery platforms, each one capable of generating weaponized starfire. 1 hour, Admiral Zephyx. We suggest you use it wisely." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zephyx alone with the wreckage of his fleet and the dawning realization that humanity had just announced their transformation from a defensive species into something far more dangerous, an aggressive stellar power capable of projecting force across interstellar distances. The galactic hegemony had spent 300 years conquering civilizations that understood conventional limitations. But humans had never understood the concept of conventional limitations. When faced with extinction, they had simply invented technologies that shouldn't have been possible and deployed them on scales that defied rational analysis. As the surviving hegemony ships fled toward home space, Admiral Zephyx finally understood what his species had awakened. They hadn't just encountered a stubborn species that refused to surrender. They had challenged a civilization that responded to existential threats by transforming themselves into something more dangerous than the original threat. And now humanity was coming for them. The emergency session of the Galactic Hegemony High Council convened in absolute secrecy, hidden deep within the armored core of Nexus Prime. For the first time in 300 years, the Empire's leadership faced the possibility of their own extinction. Supreme Coordinator Melphis floated within his containment field, his gaseous form cycling through colors that indicated profound fear. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 400 subject species watched tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of their most powerful fleet. The human weapons demonstrate energy outputs comparable to stellar phenomena, reported Chief Science Coordinator Velhak. her crystalline body resonating with harmonic frequencies of barely controlled panic. Our physicists estimate that each installation generates approximately 10 to the 18th watts of focused energy output. General Carthan's reptilian features were rigid with disbelief. That's impossible. No planetary civilization possesses the industrial capacity to construct stellar-level engineering projects. End of footnote. Nevertheless, the evidence is undeniable. Admiral Zefix interjected from his position at the tactical console. Human defensive installations successfully engaged and destroyed over 12,000 vessels before we were forced to withdraw. Each beam weapon demonstrated the capability to vaporize capital ships instantaneously. Councillor Vorthak's armored mandibles ground together audibly. How did a primitive species achieve such technological advancement? Our initial surveys indicated they barely understood quantum mechanics. Our xenological analysis suggests that human technological development follows completely irrational patterns, Velthak replied. They appear to achieve breakthrough innovations through what they call necessity-driven engineering. Essentially, they invent whatever technology is required to solve immediate problems, regardless of whether such inventions should be theoretically possible. The assembled council members absorbed this information with growing horror. Every civilized species developed technology through logical progression, theoretical research, practical applications, gradual refinement. Humans apparently skipped directly to whatever they needed, ignoring conventional limitations entirely. Sir, Admiral Zefix continued reluctantly, there's additional intelligence that makes the situation considerably worse. Worse? Nelthes' gaseous form flickered with agitated colors. How could this possibly be worse? Our long-range reconnaissance has detected human vessels throughout the outer sectors. They're not limiting their activities to defensive operations anymore. They appear to have begun what they call proactive response measures. The tactical display shifted, showing reports from the Empire's outer territories. Human ships were appearing in systems that should have been completely beyond their reach, conducting operations that defied strategic analysis. Define proactive response measures, General Carthan demanded. Admiral Zefix manipulated the display controls, highlighting specific incidents. They're systematically targeting hegemony industrial infrastructure, communication networks, and supply lines throughout our territory, that their methods are unprecedented. The first image showed the Kelvaran shipyards, a massive orbital complex that had produced hegemony vessels for over 2 centuries. Where sprawling construction facilities had once orbited a gas giant, only expanding debris clouds remained. The Calvaran installation was eliminated by a single human vessel approximately 18 hours ago, Zefix reported. The attacking ship appeared without warning, deployed some form of stellar energy weapon, and jumped to faster-than-light travel before our reinforcements could respond. One ship destroyed an entire shipyard? Councillor Vorthak's voice carried harmonics of disbelief. The energy signatures matched their defensive installations. They've somehow miniaturized stellar engineering technology into mobile weapons platforms. Additional images flashed across the display, mining operations reduced to molten slag, communication relays vaporized by focused energy beams, supply convoys destroyed with surgical precision. In each case, human forces had appeared without warning, eliminated their targets, and vanished before effective response was possible. How many installations have we lost? Over 300 confirmed, with reports still arriving from the outer sectors. They appear to be targeting anything that supports our military-industrial capacity. The scale of the attacks was staggering, but what truly terrified the Council was the coordination involved. Human forces were somehow conducting simultaneous operations across thousands of cubic light-years, suggesting logistical capabilities that exceeded anything the hegemony had achieved. Sir, Coordinator Velthak interrupted, we're receiving priority transmissions from 17 different sector governors. They're requesting immediate military reinforcement to defend critical installations. How many ships are available for deployment? Nelthis asked quietly. General Carthan reviewed the fleet status displays with growing despair. Approximately 8,000 vessels remain operational. However, protecting every critical installation throughout our territory would require over 50,000 ships to maintain adequate defensive coverage. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. The hegemony no longer possessed sufficient military force to defend their own empire. Humanity's attacks had created a tactical situation where effective defense was impossible with available resources. We could concentrate our remaining forces to protect the most critical systems, suggested Admiral Zefix. Sacrifice the outer territories to preserve core industrial capacity, and abandon 3/4 of our territory to human raiders? Verthak's mandibles clicked angrily.
Unacceptable. Then what do you suggest? Zephic's exoskeleton flickered with stress patterns. Our conventional forces are inadequate to address this threat. The humans have achieved tactical mobility and firepower that exceeds our defensive capabilities. Supreme Coordinator Melphis pulsed with colors indicating deep thought. Perhaps military solutions are insufficient. Has anyone attempted diplomatic contact with human leadership? The chamber fell silent. In 3 centuries of conquest, the hegemony had never negotiated with inferior species. Diplomatic contact was reserved for civilizations that possessed comparable technological capabilities. Sir, General Carthan spoke carefully. Initiating diplomatic contact would acknowledge humanity as a peer civilization. The implications for imperial authority could be destabilizing. The implications of continued warfare could be considerably more destabilizing, Melphis replied grimly. Admiral Zephix, prepare a diplomatic mission to Earth. Perhaps we can reach some form of accommodation. Meanwhile, aboard the human stellar destroyer Prometheus, Captain Elena Vasquez reviewed targeting data for her next assignment. The massive vessel had been constructed specifically to carry miniaturized starfire weapons into enemy territory, its hull bristling with energy projectors capable of vaporizing capital ships. Captain, we're approaching the Hegemony Logistics Hub at Kepler Station, reported her tactical officer. Enemy defenses appear to be standard configuration, orbital platforms and a small escort fleet. Any changes since our last intelligence update? Negative, ma'am. They don't appear to have reinforced this position despite our recent operations in adjacent sectors. Captain Vasquez studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Kepler Station coordinated supply movements for 17 different star systems, making it a critical node in the hegemony's logistical network. Destroying it would create supply shortages throughout an entire sector. All stations, prepare for engagement. Target priority is the Central Coordination Facility. Secondary targets include docked vessels and storage complexes. The Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system, her stellar energy weapons charging with a distinctive harmonic whine. Unlike the massive installations defending Earth, these mobile weapons were designed for precision strikes against specific targets rather than fleet engagement. Captain, enemy forces are responding to our presence, the tactical officer reported. 12 ships moving to intercept, plus orbital defense platforms. Time to target acquisition? 4 minutes to optimal firing position. Captain Vasquez nodded. 4 minutes was more than sufficient time for the hegemony forces to coordinate an attack, but human stellar weapons had demonstrated the ability to engage targets from ranges that conventional fleets couldn't match. Fire when ready. The focused energy beam lanced across space, striking Kepler Station's central hub with the destructive force of a controlled stellar flare. The massive installation simply vaporized, its matter converted to expanding plasma clouds that illuminated the entire system. Secondary targets destroyed, Captain. Enemy fleet is attempting to close to engagement range. Jump to coordinate 77 Alpha. Next target is the mining operation in the Vega system. The Prometheus vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the hegemony forces to contemplate the smoking ruins of another critical installation. Captain Vasquez's ship was one of 50 such vessels conducting similar operations throughout enemy territory, each one capable of eliminating strategic targets without warning. The human strategy was deceptively simple. Instead of trying to conquer hegemony territory, they were systematically destroying the infrastructure that made governance possible. Communication networks, industrial facilities, transportation hubs, anything that enabled the Empire to function as a coordinated entity. Sir, Admiral Zephix announced to the Emergency Council session, we've just received word the Kepler station has been destroyed. That brings our confirmed losses to over 400 installations. Supreme Coordinator Melphis's gaseous form had shifted to deep red colors indicating extreme distress. At this rate, our entire industrial infrastructure will be eliminated within months. The situation is actually worse than that, General Carthan added grimly. We're receiving reports of uprising among subject species in 17 different sectors. They appear to believe that humanity has demonstrated hegemony weakness. The empire that had maintained order through overwhelming force was discovering that perceived weakness could be just as destabilizing as actual military defeat. Species that had submitted to hegemony authority for generations were beginning to question whether continued compliance was necessary. Sir, Coordinator Veltak reported urgently, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. The humans appear to be offering diplomatic contact. Put it through immediately. Admiral Chen appeared on the main display, standing in what looked like the command center of a massive stellar engineering facility. Behind her, human technicians operated control systems that managed artificial star cores, their faces illuminated by the glow of contained fusion reactions. Supreme Coordinator Melphis, Chen's voice was professionally courteous but carried undertones of absolute confidence. Thank you for agreeing to this communication. Admiral Chen, we are prepared to discuss terms for cessation of hostilities. I appreciate that, Coordinator. However, I should clarify that humanity is not interested in negotiating a ceasefire. We're here to discuss the terms of hegemony surrender. The council chamber erupted in harmonics of outrage and disbelief. No species had ever demanded hegemony surrender. Even their most powerful enemies had sought accommodation rather than total victory. You cannot seriously expect the galactic hegemony to surrender to a single planetary civilization, Melphis protested. Coordinator, with respect, you've rather misunderstood the current tactical situation. Chen replied calmly. Humanity is no longer a planetary civilization. We are now a stellar-level power with the capability to project force throughout your territory at will. She gestured toward the displays behind her, showing real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. As we speak, human forces are conducting operations in over 200 hegemony systems. Your industrial infrastructure is being systematically eliminated, your communication networks are disrupted, and your subject species are beginning to question your authority. Furthermore, Chen continued, our intelligence indicates that you lack sufficient military force to defend even your core territories effectively. Within 6 months, the hegemony will cease to exist as a functional government. Admiral Zefik studied the tactical projections with growing horror. Human intelligence was apparently far more comprehensive than anyone had realized. They possessed detailed information about fleet dispositions, industrial capacity, and internal political stability throughout the Empire. What are your terms? Melphis asked quietly. Complete withdrawal of all hegemony forces from human space, obviously. Recognition of human sovereignty over any territory we choose to claim. And most importantly, you will cease all military operations against any species that refuses to submit to hegemony authority. You're demanding that we abandon our entire imperial structure. No, Coordinator. I'm explaining that your imperial structure has already been abandoned. We're simply offering you the opportunity to acknowledge reality before we're forced to demonstrate it more dramatically. Admiral Chen's expression remained perfectly calm, but her words carried the unmistakable weight of absolute certainty. The galactic hegemony was built on the premise that overwhelming force could maintain order throughout the galaxy. Humanity has demonstrated that your forces are no longer overwhelming. You have 48 hours to consider our terms. If you choose to continue hostilities, we will escalate our operations accordingly. I should mention that we've recently completed development of weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The species that had ruled the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force had just been given an ultimatum by a civilization they had initially dismissed as primitive savages. Sir, General Carthan spoke quietly. What are your orders? Supreme Coordinator Melphis floated motionlessly within his containment field, contemplating the complete reversal of everything his species had believed about galactic power structures. 300 years of absolute authority had ended with a human admiral calmly explaining that their empire no longer existed as a functional entity. Convene the full council, Melphis ordered finally. All subject species, all sector governors, all military commanders. We need to discuss humanity's terms. And if they refuse to accept human demands? Admiral Zefix asked. Melphis's gaseous form shifted to colors indicating profound resignation. Then we discover what happens when a species that survived 2 million years as persistence hunters decides that hunting the galactic hegemony might be easier than negotiating with us. The meeting concluded in silence, each council member contemplating the same terrible realization. Humanity hadn't just defeated their military forces. They had transformed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization itself. The age of the galactic hegemony was ending, and the age of humanity was about to begin. The full Galactic Council convened for the first time in 2 centuries, representatives from over 400 species gathering in the massive amphitheater beneath Nexus Prime. The chamber buzzed with harmonics of fear, confusion, and barely contained rebellion, as subject civilizations openly questioned hegemony authority for the first time in living memory. Supreme Coordinator Melphis floated above the assembly, his gaseous form cycling through colors that indicated profound uncertainty. Around the circular chamber, Species that had submitted to hegemony rule for generations now whispered among themselves about the humans who had somehow achieved the impossible, forcing the galaxy's greatest empire to convene emergency negotiations. The situation requires unprecedented consideration, Malthus announced, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through atmospheric processes.
Humanity has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our defensive capacity and has demanded terms that would fundamentally alter galactic power structures. Ambassador Kurthani of the Altarian Republic raised her crystalline appendage for recognition. Honored Coordinator, perhaps you could clarify exactly what humanity has accomplished?
Reports from the outer sectors are contradictory. Admiral Zefix activated the chamber's holographic display systems, showing tactical recordings from the recent battles. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as human weapons vaporized hegemony fleets with focused stellar energy, their installations demonstrating firepower that defied conventional understanding of physics.
Human forces have successfully engaged and defeated 3 separate hegemony fleets, Zefix reported.
They have also conducted systematic destruction of our military-industrial infrastructure throughout the Empire, eliminating over 700 critical installations in the past month.
700 installations?
Ambassador Vexstar of the Saurian Collective hissed through his respiratory slits. How many ships did they lose achieving this? Current human casualties are estimated at fewer than 1,000 vessels, Zefix admitted reluctantly. Their technological superiority appears to be overwhelming in both defensive and offensive applications. The chamber erupted in harmonics of disbelief. No military campaign in galactic history had achieved such strategic impact with so few losses. The mathematical impossibility of the human achievement suggested capabilities that transcended conventional warfare entirely.
Perhaps, Ambassador Kurthani suggested carefully, we should consider whether continued resistance serves any rational purpose. Her words carried implications that would have been unthinkable months earlier. The suggestion that the galactic hegemony should surrender to a single planetary species.
But the tactical evidence was undeniable. Humanity possessed both the capability and apparent willingness to destroy the Empire entirely. The humans have offered specific terms, Supreme Coordinator Malthus announced. Complete withdrawal from their territory, recognition of their sovereignty over any systems they choose to claim, and cessation of forced imperial expansion. They're demanding that we abandon our entire colonial structure, protested Governor Zalton of the Industrial Worlds. Without subject species providing resources and labor, the core worlds cannot maintain current population levels. Without military force to compel compliance, Admiral Zefix pointed out grimly, we have no colonial structure to abandon.
Human operations have demonstrated that we can no longer protect our own installations, let alone enforce compliance among subject species.
The terrible mathematics of imperial collapse were becoming clear to everyone present.
The hegemony's power had always depended on the perception of invincibility, the assumption that resistance was futile, because hegemony forces would inevitably prevail. Humanity had shattered that perception completely.
Sir, General Carthan interjected urgently, we're receiving priority communications from the outer sectors. Multiple subject species are declaring independence and requesting human protection.
The holographic display shifted to show reports arriving from throughout the Empire. The Aquarii enclaves had expelled hegemony governors and established direct diplomatic contact with Earth. The Centauran Mining Federation had ceased resource ship,